Hey Chris, thanks for accepting the invite. And I think let's keep it informal, just a fireside chat on
Yeah,
some of the technologies we like, some of the stocks we like, and some of the trends we are seeing.
yeah,
So, just to start with, just let me know, something about you. What do you do? I think this is
yeah,
first time we are meeting here.
yeah. So I work primarily in radiology. I have a background also in a little bit of IT. So right now I work in informatics with radiology. So a lot of like new technology and everything else. I'm part of like some implementation teams that are involved with it. And it's very interesting. Like the field is changing really, really rapidly. I also kind of see a lot of things like developing in like because I actually work in a hospital. So even though I don't directly deal with patient care, I do see a lot of the trends that are happening here and there. And my wife is actually works on the clinical side, so she's an emergency room pharmacist. So she actually sees a lot of stuff, and so a lot of the information I get about COVID, I usually get it through her and some of her colleagues. So it's interesting to see how things are developing with regards like the vaccines and with regards to the treatment plans that people are going in. It's kind of weird because like it's like an evolving thing. So a lot of people think that people can just come up with one medicine and everything gets fixed all of a sudden, and that's not usually the case, especially when it comes to viruses, because viruses are notorious at changing themselves as treatments come around, right? And that's been one of the biggest tragedies of COVID in that we do have variants, we do have mutants that will kind of develop, and the treatments that we might have had 6 months ago are not as effective, and that's kind of the tragedy of the entire thing. And the people don't necessarily understand that you kind of have to treat this like an evolving problem, not so much as a just, hey, it's a one and done kind of situation. So any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. No, I agree on that. So my background is not healthcare.
Yeah,
Though, of course, like you read about things, you discuss within your community, within your, a lot of friends are in biotech and healthcare sector to talk about it. So one thing which I learned like again and again over the last 2 decades was that how long the drug development is actually taking.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and
So
and what I learned was that everyone knows about it,
mhm,
and there was a lot of like I wouldn't call it process it, just like people were at least the regulator side, I think people were getting incompetent about it. I mean, they have created so many processes rather than urgency,
mhm,
and it was happening a lot of time. Like for example, I remember when I was quite young, I mean, people will say, oh, cancer will take like 5 6 years. I mean, we're just five
mhm,
six years away from the cure. I mean, we are still 5 6 years away from the cure. So that shadow of the future, that urgency was not there.
yeah,
And a lot of time people discuss about it, that in case of any emergency, it could be a challenge. So this was something always on my mind, that how will it affect. So COVID gave a quite a stark example in that case, that when it happened, and like I mean, a lot of organizations, a lot of associations, they are filled of in my opinion, and since I don't know these people, so I cannot vouch, I can only judge by the actions, is it wasn't effective. They become
yeah.
more like a political and strategic exercise at time rather than solutions, and when people need it, I think they have failed us. So
Well, I think what it is it comes down to liability, right? So a lot of drugs, when you look at them, every drug, I'm sure that there isn't a single pharmaceutical company out there that's trying to harm people actively. So they're always trying to develop things that are going to be effective, but at the same time reduce their liability significantly. So that's why there's testing on top of testing on top of testing. And this is the first time in a really long time where people understood that the disease was more important, trying to figure out how to cure it, rather than trying to decide whether or not how you're going to indemnify yourself against a possible side effect, right? Because that's essentially one of the things that you have to be cognizant of. So a lot of like the emergency uses by the FDA and everything else, they sidestepped a lot of the regulatory processes that they had in place. And so that's why we were able to kind of put together a lot of different things that normally would have taken 3 to 5 years minimum before they would have come to market, right? I mean, and a lot of it, especially when it comes to Regeneron, a lot of the benefits that we have now with regards to the Regeneron vaccine is that the technology was developed during the Ebola period. So when Ebola came around, that's when a lot of their technology was like, okay, we need to do this, this, and this in order to get a monoclonal that'll be effective. And so their technology was ready when COVID hit. So it wasn't the same exact monoclonal, but basically how to get to that monoclonal. So Regeneron was able to kind of capitalize on that. And that's one of the things I like about AbCellera, because it has a lot of their similarities in terms of technology to what Regeneron has. A good example of it is the Triani mouse, right? It's a humanized genome, or it's a humanized mouse pretty much with a humanized immune system. So a lot of the responses that you get are going to be very similar to what you would get in a human candidate with the virus. So those antibodies mirror pretty much human antibodies, and thus the chances of side effects are very, very small. And there's only 3 companies that have transgenic animals that have that kind of patent. And I think the 3 are Regeneron, Kymab, and now AbCellera through their partnership with Triani. And it's very interesting because the field is really, really like doing well. And I think, like I said, AbCellera has a lot of different technology platforms that they're bringing together. Usually what I've seen in the past when it comes to drug development, especially with certain companies, is that they'll have to do a little bit of research by contracting this area, and then they'll have to contract this one, and then they'll have to contract this, and then kind of piece together everything, and then go to clinical trials, which takes years. And it ends up being a very expensive process with no guaranteed results. You know, so one of the things that AbCellera is doing really well is saying, well, look, if we are able to kind of take that technology that we've worked and developed and get you to the early part of it, then all you have to really worry about is the clinical trials, right? And once the drug is in clinical trials, the pharmaceutical companies are much better at managing that, like at a larger scale, especially if you have partnerships with like treatment sites all over the country, like the Pfizers of the world or the Lillys and everything else. What's also really exciting about AbCellera is that it kind of gives the technology, like a smaller pharmaceutical companies, even medium-sized pharmaceutical companies, don't necessarily have access to this kind of technology, right? So that's why they're willing to partner with AbCellera and saying, look, we will give you a part of the royalties after everything is done and everything comes through. And essentially, they don't necessarily have to bear a lot of that cost that they normally would have had to if they had done all the research themselves. And go ahead.
Kris, what kind of cost are we talking about? Like, I mean, how much? So one thing is that they save time. Second is they save money. How much money AbCellera help these companies to save in general? I mean, ballpark.
It kind of depends on the disease that they're trying to solve, because it can vary significantly. You know, if it's especially something that's like significantly marketable, like cancer treatments and everything else, it could be a lot of money that they end up saving them, because there's so much that goes involved with it. And there is no real, how do I say this? There's no real fixed amount that I can say like, hey, you know, it'll take $1 billion or $2 billion. But on average, I've seen anywhere between 500 million to about $3 billion worth of research and development that goes into a drug prior to even getting to a point where it's ready on any commercial level. So I would say if it takes about $3 billion to get a very, very big drug to market, I would say maybe like half of that would be saved by 1.5 billion on average. I mean, their numbers speak different number. They say they're kind of projecting on the high end, almost like a $3 billion cost per drug on what the investor relations for AbCellera says. But, there are ways that you can, I don't want to say cut corners, but there are ways that you can save some money here and there. You do your you do a lot of the research, in other countries and everything else. You don't necessarily, what's the word? You outsource a lot of the back end work. So you can save money, but it's not the most ideal thing to do. It's just and it varies a lot. But I can tell you this, for AbCellera, they're essentially taking away that risk, right? Anytime you have a pharmaceutical company, even before you get to the point where you're able to submit for an IND, you're already spending money, right? You're spending tremendous amounts of money just to get to that point. You have to license different technologies in order to research. You have to, get specific types of hardware, like machines that will actually run these tests. And then you have time to calculate and factor the time that it's going to take. And, you have to hire scientists that are going to do this kind of work. All that ends up adding to a significant amount, which now you don't necessarily have to worry about, because you can kind of work with AbCellera a little bit and have them say, okay, this is our target. This is what we're looking for. You have all the technology. So they do majority of that first part research. And then literally they give you a fixed product. I wouldn't say a fixed product, but they give you data to the point where it can kind of point in the right direction to say, hey, these are the candidates that have the highest chances of success based on the research that we've done in partnership with you and your scientists. And that essentially translates to very low input cost. What these companies are giving up essentially, though, is equity, right? Like equity in future development of that drug. But that typically happens when you think of any drug really that gets to a good state. You'll have private equity investors typically have certain investments in on the private side. Well, they'll say, hey, we want 20% of all net sales for 5 years until we make X money back, right? And so giving up that equity is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're getting a high level of research that's being done for your specific product. So a really good example is, which one is it that I just looked at? It's one of the ones that they partner with, Kodiak Sciences. Kodiak Sciences is a partner with AbCellera. Kodiak has phase 3 approved. Well, is in phase 3 right now. It's about to go approved. It's going to get approved for macular degeneration. So it's like loss of eyesight due to old age. And basically, the current treatment is Lucentis, and literally you have to get treatments by getting an injection in your eye, and it's almost every month. Yeah, and you have to get that almost every month, right? Imagine that. It's crazy.
And that's painful, man. That's even painful to hear.
Yeah, and it's really, but it works, right? But the drug that they have right now with Kodiak, it works really well, and you only have to do it 3 times a year. And Lucentis is about to go off patent in the next couple of years. So kind of like that's another big one that I'm probably going to be investing in a little bit of money with just Kodiak Sciences, because like I said, they have so many use cases for it, and the product that they have is much better. So instead of getting 12 injections a year, you only have to get 3, which is still rough, but but it's much better. And even from like a live, and even from a live, go ahead, sorry.
So just to put it in the, just for the sake of anyone who hear it, once we upload it, what does it mean, like in terms of, so for example, like if a company A works with AbCellera and AbCellera helps them to reduce the cost, let's say for the sake of example, they reduce the cost in a tune of 1 to 3 billion. Now in an organization setup, that 1 to 3 billion is not saving, it's an investment. So if I'm developing a drug and I invest $10 billion, the idea is that this $10 billion of investment will generate value for me from 20 to $100 billion moving forward. Okay. Yeah. Now, when I save this 2-3 billion in a drug development, I'm not saving this 2-3 billion in general. I'm saving this 2-3 billion as an investment that can give me further value when investing, because I mean nobody's gonna keep the money. If they have the money, they will invest it again. Second is you are reducing the time. So that means by the time you put your first dollar and by the time you make your first dollar, that cycle is reduced. So it's just so in terms of organization, when organization is saving time 20% or saving cost 20%, in terms of value generated out of that is actually in multiples rather than just 20% in 20%. So that's why I mean I see like because earlier I was thinking, okay, why a company is okay giving equity and royalty, because they are saving money and that money is being invested back in their business and it's going to make more money. So it's not about like one-time solution, it's more about a partnership. So this is where I see like AbCellera has this kind of a stickiness, that where companies work with them and they say fine, yeah, there is a cost that comes with it, there is a, but on the net basis we are capturing more market and we are generating more revenue. So that's what, when I saw like AbCellera, I mean so I kind of like it. And I was like, there was a time like I was following Peter Thiel on healthcare sector, and I was looking that he's very focused. He invested in a lot of companies. I mean, the couple of companies I invested, the one I did was Kodiak Sciences. I mean, again, I said, I mean, I'm not a healthcare guy, so I mean, I don't have that expertise. I talk to people like, so I remember one of my friend calling me and said, okay, this is Kodiak Sciences. I said, dude, what it does? They said, oh, they make magic mushrooms, and I was laughing. I said, man, what is magic mushroom? I have no clue about it. But when I started looking into a Thai, I saw something very different. I saw like a Thai is doing their own research in psychedelics, but they're also having this incubation where they're investing in different companies, taking equity. And they're also kind of bringing right data platforms for this research, and they are leveraging research from one company to other, so that different companies. So at the end of the day, what I saw was that there is, so for example, like Robient is one of their investment, Palantir has also invested in there. So I saw that there is a lot of snowball effect here. I mean, what they are trying to do is not just to do like getting a psychedelic treatment. They are actually building quite a holistic range of mental treatments, and the way they are doing it, it's actually very inclusive, because you have your own workforce, and then you have these companies which are focused on a particular sectors. And I was surprised because I was looking at Compass Pathways and I was reading some of the reports. I mean, people were saying that this company can go 65, some of the bull case analysts. And that particular time, I think Atai had like 25 or 29% in Compass Pathways. So at 65, Compass Pathways was around 2.5 billion. Somebody who has 25, that came around 674 million. And the Series B funding, Atai raised 674. So I thought, if I enter now, then, and if CMPS bull case is realized, of course, why that bull case works, that's a different theory. I thought, I mean, all these 18, 19 companies and drugs, I mean, this is coming free. If even 2 and 3 of that goes through with FDA approval. So it had some signs, of course. I mean, Thiel was there, Christian Angermar was there. So yeah, I really liked it, and that triggered me to do more research in psychedelics, because one of the things which I thought that particular time was, there is still a stigma in a lot of places, in large portion of medical communities at time in different countries. But it saw like what kind of legislative movements are ongoing. So this triggered me to look more and more into healthcare, and this is where AbCellera came to me. And very AbCellera is difficult for me to understand. I mean, Atai I understand somewhat in terms of business model. I understand AbCellera. I understand in terms of effect, but what it does, how it does, I mean, it's still quite an enigma for me.
Right. So I would say it has a very similar business. First, I just want to clarify. It has a very similar business model to what you just said with Atai, but it doesn't necessarily just focus on psychedelics. It has a broad range of partnerships with different different commercialization partners that have all sorts of range of treatments that they can do. So one of the things that I like about AbCellera is that they're not like narrowly focused on just one specific area of the drug, of like a drug development. So, you know, you'll see certain companies, they have a lot of focus on heart medication, or some have a lot of focus on eyes and everything else. The beauty of AbCellera is that it can actually do multiple indications, right? Like go through the wide gamut of it. So, and by having such large partners, it also lends credibility to their platform to do a lot of that research. If you look at AbCellera and all of their employees, they're all PhDs with research backgrounds, pretty much. Anyone who's on the, pretty much on one on the executive team and two on the research team. That's a really telling sign, because it shows you that they're heavily focused on research and development, right? So it's just think of them as an R&D platform, right? They're essentially an R&D platform that works with the pharma companies. Now, there are certain things within their R&D platform that they've had to bolt on because that wasn't like sort of developed by themselves. So they do that through acquisitions. So they did the Triani mouse. Triani mouse was developed by another company, but you needed to have a humanized genome on in order to do a lot of that research for these monoclonals. Another one that they just picked up was Tetra Genetics. Once again, that also focuses right back into the research. Most of the technology, the early part of it was the rapid testing, what's that thing called? I don't know. I'm still trying to piece together a lot of that early patent technology that was developed by Dr. Carl Henson, who's their CEO. And basically, that's essentially the secret sauce to a lot of their technology, in that they can do a lot of testing in a very short period of time using very small doses or very small examples, pretty much. And like I said, it's just something that to consider. And then on top of it, now they have machine learning, which can do a lot of the analysis to figure out. And that's another platform that they have, something called Cellu. I have to look it up. Not Cellularity. No, it's
Okay.
Cellularity is one of those companies that
In the cancer
Palantir.
research with Palantir.
Yeah.
I mean, I know because Cellularity
Yeah.
is one company that has office in Malaysia also. So
Yeah.
that I was pretty intrigued by it. Okay, in Malaysia, there's a company that is working, which has some ties with Palantir.
Yeah.
I actually never checked with my circle if anybody knows what they are doing. But yeah, I think I should reach to find more about it.
Yeah. No, it's another platform that they have. It's more for visualization, but it's something, sell something. I have to look it up. I should have taken the notes for it. But a lot of the terms that they have, each one of their platforms is somewhat unique to get them to the point where they can, you know, give a finished IND to that pharmaceutical partner. But like I said, that's something that I'm going to try to do more videos and just break down each one of their technologies. Because remember, when you're doing research, you're not just using one technology. You're using multiple technologies to come to certain conclusions. And each one is kind of helping you refine your end state that you're looking for. So it's almost like taking a billion possibilities, narrowing them to a million, and then narrowing them down to 10,000, narrowing it down to 1,000, and then eventually you get to a point where it's 100, and then even further down to like 4 or 5, right? But the amount of research that it takes to get from this to this is significant. And if you can figure out how to go from this to this in a short period of time, that speaks highly of the technology. And with regards to COVID, I think that was the point which it kind of gave me confidence in the company, because think of it this way: the amount of research that it takes to develop this kind of stuff, they were able to do in a very short period of time. And now it's a proven technology, right? A lot of companies can come out and say, hey, I can do the research for you. You know, you can just come to me and I'll do everything and I'll give you a finished product. But what guarantee is there that what you're showing me is going to work? You have none. Yeah. But now you've got a lot of credibility in that, one, you've figured out how to do a monoclonal for COVID. You know, you saved lives. So you're getting notoriety because of that, right? you have these big time partnerships with all these companies, especially the major pharmaceuticals, who believe that you have a product that works, right? And then on top of it, you have like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are mega research partners with a lot of pharmaceutical companies. And you have the credibility with DARPA, which is the U.S. government's defense organization, working with you. So you can see how a lot of people can say a lot of things, but they actually have a product that works. And what's good about investing right now is that we're still really early in the development cycle for this, because I think, and as you probably know, when you think of royalties, especially on a successful thing, that's high margin. That's a lot. That's significant.
That's high margin, and most important thing, I think. So the way I, something like who is not from biotech background, when I see companies like AbCellera, so my view is either these companies have zero value or they have value that is north of $20 billion. So now if you have started generating cash and you are helping companies who are investing almost $100 billion in R&Ds,
yeah.
Okay, I think the chances for the company to go at zero is less.
Yeah.
And in biotech, I mean, my view is very clear. If you are a good company and you are solving real life problems, yeah, I mean, your valuation has to exceed above $10-15 billion, especially now when the healthcare sector is getting so much. And this is when I invest in healthcare. This is one of the theme I keep. Hey, one company I would ask you to look in future and see if you can make a video about it. Okay. And the reason I'm telling you is this, because if you ask me that I have ever made an investment where I think I can get 100x, I think this is the company.
Okay.
Okay. The company is called Practilogics. This is one of the most expensive investment I have ever made. Most expensive in terms of, because I gave upfront fees. I'm paying management fees for the investment, and I have to pay like 25% carried. The reason I did it is following. So I did some basic research in peptides, in development. I discussed with some of my friends in biotech whether the technology hold some novel edge. And this company did a Series B funding last year, and that was led by Thiel Capital. So I invested alongside with a PE firm who was joining the Thiel Capital in that. And it was, the valuation was 90 million. I was like, same thing. 90 million is not a valuation in this sector.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like now you get 90 million valuation in Series B when you are working on some proof of concept and things like that. Okay, and of course I looked in all the people who are working in the company. I checked their research papers. I as much I could understand. I highlighted some of the sections, asked my biotech friends, I mean, what is this? Does it look like legit and things like that? So this is one company that caught my attention. So my thesis for this was very simple. Same thing, it fails, it goes to zero. Okay, but given like same thing, you have the Thiel network, and Thiel is building all these healthcare companies with very strong network effect. They have been hiring some really good to talented people. Like you said, in the case of AbCellera, there are a lot of people with good PhDs and good research background. So I think like if they are, I mean, going for some FDA files soon as well, that so could this company be a 9 billion, 10 billion? And like I said, I mean, in case of biotech, my view is that if you are a company who is working on very complex problem and frontier solutions, either you fail at it or you really break through. I mean, like take the case of Moderna. Moderna has been there for years, and they have been discussing about the mRNA for a long time. I mean, I remember watching this Netflix documentary long back, and everybody said it's revolutionary, but question is why anyone applied. Then COVID presented the right scenarios for it, and suddenly before Moderna actually sold a single vial, I mean, the company market cap was, I think, above 20 billion before they sold anything. So it's a high risk business. I mean, of course, these trials are very secretive, confidential. So, I mean, the investors like me, I mean, we have to like make an indirect judgment about things. So this is what I did with the Practilogics.
Mhm.
and let me know. I mean, have a look at it.
Sure.
I would love your video on
Yeah.
Practilogics, man. This is,
Sure.
to me, this is one company. Same thing, either goes to 0 or goes to 100x from here.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look. And in the same light, I would take a look at Kodiak also from your perspective. The reason why, and it's ticker symbol KOD. One of the really interesting things is just this month, they actually the company just um, changed up their compens. Well, they didn't change it up without approval. The approval is about to be done in October. But essentially, what they've done is um, change their compensation so that upfront equity that they were supposed to be getting on an annualized basis ends up getting folded into performance-based compensation. And the performance-based compensation, especially in this late of a what is that thing? A late of a period, speaks volumes to what it is. The current, like I said, market leader Lucentis generates about 2.5 billion in net sales per year, right? 2.5 billion in net sales. This company right now has a much better product that's going to come on. They have pretty much most of the commercial rights. I don't think they've given up much equity outside of their partnership with one firm. And even that is a limited amount of return that firm can get. But essentially, the stock price can go between right now, which is trading at 100, all the way to like 800. The the stock performance is purely on a stock value amount. So it's almost like, I think, and they don't even break, and the executives, based on the current compensation package, don't even break even compared to their compensation package right now until the stock price hits $400 a share. My estimate here is that once their product is there, they're going to be commercial launching in about 2023, and all that cash flow that they generate, they're just going to use it to buy back shares and just do additional research. And the additional research will probably be centered not around other things, but more on additional use cases for this medicine itself. And like I said, there's so many things that that I think are very positive about this, and this company can very easily, 5x. And the market cap, like I said, is still really, really
No, it's
small for
I
the
agree.
market that they're
I'm
going
just
for.
seeing the market cap. I mean, I just opened it, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it makes quite a good sense. Let me see if I can share it as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean it looks pretty good actually. I mean, like I said, I mean the companies that are building
Yeah.
solutions like this.
Yeah.
Let me know if you could see
Yeah,
it.
I can see it.
So
The
yeah,
the
I mean,
biggest the biggest thing with this is that commercialization. See, a lot of people, they think FDA approval is the only thing that's necessary for the company to go parabolic, but honestly, it's how they're going to like how and when they can commercialize and what their target is and how fast they can ramp up their sales. In my opinion, they'll be able to do it very, very quickly, but it does take time. So some people ask me like, oh, is this worth buying options in a farm, especially with pharmaceutical companies? People want to, have these quick hits, but this is one of those companies that, given time, will go up a significant amount. It's just not going to happen overnight. So if people are saying, oh yeah, what's your price target in a year? I don't know. It could be anything, to be honest with you. But I think in the long term, this company is going to do very well.
no, I agree. I mean, I mean, overall the story of this company, as well as, I mean, seeing that recently, I think insiders are also buying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm going to add this to my list, because like my view is like, so I mean everyone knows that I follow big data, digital, AI.
Yeah.
Despite like I came from energy sector, but it somehow ended up in this large digital implementation project where I developed this kind of expertise. I mean, of course, I have gaps, but I'm seeing more and more. And like 3-4 months back, I decided that, yeah, I mean, I'm doing a lot of things. Very, very happy with all of that. But for next 20 years, I'm only going to work in digital and data. I think that's the decision I made, because in a job like Boston Consulting, I mean, I was all over the place at times. You were working with regulators in terms of fiscal regimes, national energy roadmaps. I mean, companies are doing debt restructuring. You're working with banks in terms of their ESG products. I mean, my background is oil and gas before I broadened my horizon with renewables in energy. So, I mean, everyone is worried like, okay, what is going to happen with the sector? So for me, like I saw that part, and but healthcare is something which I think it's very difficult to neglect, because a lot of money is going to come, and you know, right now we are only talking about the crisis thing. The one thing which we are missing is that healthcare, even at a basic level in a lot of things, were actually pretty substandard. So once you start seeing, when the company starts seeing that people see that they can be treated well, I mean, it's not like that the advancement will happen in one drug or one area, because when so normally what I see is like when there is an advancement, you see more R&D money is coming, you see more talent comes to that, and then everybody is pushed to make improvements. So when this is triggered, we need to see healthcare improvement across everything. That means whatever is current standards of telehealth, that has to improve. Whatever is the standard in terms of instrumentations, that has to improve. Okay, the application of AI ML in the sector has to improve. So I'm seeing that, okay, in general there will be a lot of pockets, and since what we are saying that it is looking, there is going to be a lot of innovation, and historically a lot of innovation comes from new companies. So this is where I think there will be a lot of opportunities. Yes, it's a risky sector, but I think it's exciting as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think there's a lot of capital that's flowing in this direction, and especially with the monoclonals, that's a relatively new, I won't say that new of a sector, but it's much more newer than many of the old technologies that they had. And the other thing is, with regards to AbCellera's thing, with the reason why, and a lot of people are really looking at companies that can be very disruptive. The area what they're disrupting right now is research, right? A lot of companies and a lot of things that the research that usually companies do, the platforms that they use, are almost 30, 40 years old. So those things haven't changed very much in the last 30 years. AbCellera is coming in and saying, no, there's better ways that we can do the research. We can, optimize the research to give us a much more focused product, and we could do it in a much more shortened time span, right? So instead of using your traditional ways that you were doing things, which took years, we can do it in a very short period of time. Like instead of doing things that took years, we can do them in months, right? And that's the key of the disruptive technology that they have, So that's where like I said, that's where I'm interested in AbCellera for.
No, you're right. I mean, I remember like one of my classmates in INSEAD, she used to work for this company. I don't remember the name, but the company used to provide resources for clinical research. And I asked her one time, like, why somebody's outsourcing, and she explained me like in terms of pitfalls and how they carry. I never actually able to relate that experience with AbCellera. Because now I remember, I mean, that her company was quite big. I mean, they were raking billions in terms of services they were providing. So, yes, it's good you mentioned, because now I can relate what kind of TAM AbCellera is going after. Because their company was like they are the leading providers of clinical service globally. And I remember looking at that. I mean, the revenue was pretty serious. So it's good. Hey, I do have some more questions, and please bear with me. They may be very naive questions, but better I ask. So when we were kid, we used to have these vaccines. You take it once and you are done. You still, I mean, since I worked in oil and gas, and you always have to keep your vaccination records up, you get these vaccines which can still effective for like 5 years, 6 years, sometimes 10 years. Okay, then before you take booster. But why this with COVID? I mean, vaccines are even failing in terms of like after 6 months, 8 months. What is so unique about this now? Or will we see in future better versions of these vaccines which could be effective for a longer period?
So the thing with vaccines, it's not so much the vaccine that, there's anything really yes or no with it. It's more or less the virus itself and how it transforms. If you look at historically, right, viruses, when they come inside your body, they essentially take over your healthy cells and they start replicating themselves, making copies of themselves more and more and more to the point where they're essentially fighting your immune system and they have more control over your immune system to be able to function. And that's what causes death. So if you look at your viruses like HIV, right, we've never been able to cure HIV. There's never been a vaccine for HIV. Why is that? Well, because HIV is so notorious in that it's always constantly developing itself and mutating itself within the host body. And it's kind of the same thing, to be honest, with COVID a little bit too, where it is transforming itself over and over and over. And that's why we're getting different variants that are coming around, right? And also, there are still pathways on why the effectiveness of these vaccines is diminishing that have still to be still have to be answered. So like an example is the Moderna vaccine has been proven that it lasts longer in terms of effectiveness than the Pfizer one. Why? Majority of the people in Israel were given the Pfizer vaccine. Well, they found out after about 6 months, the vaccine effectiveness drops significantly. That's why people needed to get boosters, right? And a lot of people right now are saying, well, then am I going to have to keep getting these boosters? And that's kind of also been the other thing too, where this is still ongoing research that hasn't been fully explained yet as to what's causing the drop in effectiveness of these vaccines, and it's going to be one of those things that we just have to eventually change ourselves with the science. I'm glad I was listening to, I think I was your Twitter, I was listening to it, and it was like, COVID is an endemic at this point. There's no end game where we just say, okay, here's one magical drug. Yeah, and the other thing is we're not going to be able to control this with lockdowns and everything else. Australia is under, I think, its 4th or 5th lockdown at this point. It's just, this is one of those things that's too broad now. It's everywhere. So the only thing we can honestly do at this point is to develop vaccines that, work, get the boosters as needed, and then also at the same time have medicines that can tackle the virus in case you do get exposed to it, like the COVID-19 antibody cocktails with Regeneron and with Eli Lilly. Because essentially what happens is when you are early in that exposure cycle, as long as they give you those monoclonals, that'll mimic your immune response in a very short period of time. These monoclonals don't necessarily work for a very long period of time, but it gives your immune system enough time to the point where it can develop a lot of these antibodies so that the symptoms that you end up having are very mild and you don't even need hospitalization, So that's the key right there, that we're going to have to kind of work to figure out what's going on with this virus. There isn't any sort of real 100% clear-cut answer as to why the efficacy is dropping. And like I said, it's weird because the efficacy is dropping in one vaccine versus the other, and so it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? And I also think we're making a mistake right now with regards to the FDA. I mean, it's their opinion, so I'm not going to, I'm not nearly in their shoes.
It's nowadays that's a problem. I mean, if you raise an opinion and it's not aligned with the certain guidelines. Social media just come and hammer you. Okay, you're spreading rumor. The thing is, that's the thing. I'm not very comfortable is that the opportunity of debate has ended before it started.
Yeah.
You cannot debate about it. That's the reason. I've been in lockdown for now. Since last March. And you are absolutely right. Lockdown when it started, and I was there. I was advising people and communities and countries at time how to tackle situations, because people were working offshore and things like that. Lockdown had a purpose in the starting because nobody knew what's happening. You needed to break the chain of spread, and you needed to prepare the basic necessities and infrastructure ready for it. In the meantime, people figure out what's the medicine look like and what's the SOPs look like. But somehow, the way administrations have behaved, because like they did lockdown, suddenly they saw the rates are going down and people started trumping about it and bragging about it. So somehow a lot of these people sitting in this position, they have related the lockdown as an effective step, because it gave them that kind of a praise at one time. I mean, the idea of lockdown is forgotten in a lot of places. You cannot keep people hostage for a long time. I mean, at the end of the day, people will come out because, yeah, I mean, it's up to a point which is quite ironic actually at this point.
Yeah, I think lockdowns can work, but only if done really, really early in the development cycle, and it's very regionalized, and you have no escape whatsoever. And literally, that was a possibility early last year in like November, December in China and they did everything they could to kind of prevent it from getting out. But we live in a very globalized world right now. There's people traveling all over the world, people traveling interstate, and it's just we live in a much more different era where I don't think and at this point what's the term? Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Everything is out now. You can't put it back in. You had an opportunity when there was a slight crack in Pandora's box where you could have closed it really quick, but you missed that opportunity. Now it's gone. So now you just have to deal with the fallouts of for whatever was in the box. And unfortunately, if you're looking at it from another disease angle, the Spanish flu, which has very similar connotations to this, it took about 3 years for it to really control. So I think we're about a year and a half, halfway there. I think we still got a little ways to go, I think. But the one thing that I have to say is that COVID didn't necessarily change, a lot of things in medicine, but what it did is it changed us. Because I don't think that there's going to be a future for vertically integrated cities as much as it is now, right? I think a lot more people are realizing that, hey, maybe we don't need to all cram up together and have a ton of people living in a very small area. Same thing with businesses. I think a lot of businesses, I live in New York, and in New York, I can tell you, companies have saved a tremendous amount of money not having to pay office leasing and renting fees. They're saying, you know what? Most of my workforce is mobile. I can have a small office located somewhere here and still have the same level of effectiveness and productivity, thanks to the technologies that we have, like what we're doing right now. I mean, you're in Malaysia, I'm in Georgia right now. It's worlds away, yet we can have this interaction. Now, especially if you were, let's say we had a client-facing business, 5, maybe 10 years ago, this might not have been an ideal thing to do, but now with the technology, it works.
I agree, and I mean totally agree on that. I mean, since I was in consulting, and before that I was like mostly in oil and gas, where you have a lot of remote operations and all that. So even though like we were trained, I mean, like in consulting, you're always on the move. You're on the meeting while in taxi, just before you're boarding the flight, in hotel, during breakfast, during lunch, during dinner. I mean, that's what the life was all about. So when I moved into this work from home situation in terms of technology, I mean, I didn't feel odd because we were already doing it. The few things like when I look back and like people ask me like where we could have stopped COVID, and here is my version, okay, and I'll tell you like why I think like this. So the rule in of incidents is that's how we are taught is that every major incident has a lot of small precedents. So like everyone says like COVID had a perfect recipe because it was just happening in that city. Then you have people traveling for Chinese New Year's, which brought it back. Yeah. So the question is, the way we look at any incident, because I spend a lot of my time in scenario planning. Okay, like the way we look at it is that things doesn't happen that smoothly just out of nowhere. They happen in pieces before that, but there is always some break of chain. That means something would have happened somewhere, would have virus would have come like that, but there was no big gathering or people coming and traveling for. So the way I look back and I see, like, when those small things have happened in past, probably people had the opportunity to learn and to stop it, but people didn't change it. Like, it's a very simple example: you cross a road in a very rash manner. Okay, nothing happens. Okay, I mean, you get self-confidence. I mean, you will. How many people actually think that, okay, I did it, it's bad, I'm gonna change it? A lot of people don't actually, and you start increasing the risk level, and because it hasn't happened with you. But then it becomes question of when, then if, and this is exactly what happened in my opinion. Okay, with COVID, there were things happening over the time, different part of worlds for different reasons, but there was always this break of chain somewhere that all these elements were not coming together to turn it into a pandemic like this. So when COVID happened, actually, the chances to stop something like this were way before it. Okay, I mean, now we are looking back and people are saying the kind of level of lab they were using. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about it, and I mean, we will never know what actually happened now. I mean, people will use, because see, if you figure it out, like who actually did it and has it happened, people don't want to listen any narrative. People have their own narrative, so nobody will actually know what's the reality is. And yeah, I mean, and even if countries come to know about it, they will not tell public. They will use it for leverage. I mean, that's so today, like when you sit on Netflix and you see Discovery and you see what governments and people have done 50 years, 60 years back, this is what they have done. So this is what they will do. Yeah. I mean, that's the reality. So the only lesson I think that people, if they can take forward, is that take small incidents seriously. Yeah. Because if you put effort on small slips, small incidents seriously, only then, I mean, yeah, it's not exciting, it's not, but small incident, because these are the kind of things, they come once and they wipe out a lot of value, like we have seen in the case of COVID. I hope people and governments can remember that lesson. I do have one question, Kris, and this one question is bothering me a lot. Why AbCellera is still not working with Palantir, or are they working, or we don't know about it? Because in general, like at least in Thiel ecosystem, when companies are working with Palantir, I mean, I think there is always some news or something. So this is something because, like, for example, you take the case of Syntropy. Okay, Syntropy is a perfect example. Like, you have Merck, they have decades of data, decades of expertise, decades of research. They have their conventional way of doing and building products, and then Palantir came. And I'll share also later, like which that Palantir, one thing which people don't know, and one thing which people underestimate, and this is what I saw in the case of the supervisor, that they actually, when they take the data, they take the initial part of data, they take it without expertise. They say, okay, let's just see the data, what's coming out of it, and build some processes out of it and change out of it. And when they kind of take it back to the people who have expertise, sometimes it surprises them also, because they haven't thought it like this. This is the example I have seen in oil and gas. And so, yeah, Syntropy is a perfect example. So, I mean, and we have seen, like they are working with Cellularity, they are working with Rovient and other companies. And AbCellera is data AI based discovery. So this is something which surprised me, like why they are not yet together yet.
I think mainly, if I had to guess, I would say for two reasons. One is that AbCellera right now is still in the process of kind of building out a lot of stuff, right? and they might very well be working with Palantir, but they might be one of those companies that's not necessarily announced it yet. You never know, especially if Peter Thiel is on the board, and he just joined the board in December, I think November or December, literally right before the IPO, right? So there is a possibility that could be happening. It's just we don't necessarily know it. And also at the same time, there's some level of probably, how do I say this, like hesitation to be full-blown announced right now. I think in the future it may be there. And right now, AbCellera, believe it or not, is still early in its development. They're still building out their headquarters in Vancouver. There's still a lot of things that have to go into building themselves. The other thing is, if you look at Palantir, they've traditionally taken their partnerships, especially with the SPAC deals, on much more smaller companies, your $1 billion startups, your 4 or 5 billion. So the thing is, I'm not sure how much equity stake Palantir would get by partnering with AbCellera right now, in which case, like I said, I don't know. Maybe they have partnered in the background, but haven't necessarily said it. And even Palantir says it. There are certain companies that don't necessarily want to announce that we're partners. Like one of the ones that I worked, what I found was with what's his name, Palantir, and I gave the data to Palantir Vision, was AbbVie. AbbVie is huge. It's one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, yet there was no formal announcement with regards to working with Palantir. And that was surprising to me. I was like, oh, why not announce that? And they just chose not to, So.
I agree. I think the logic makes sense because there's a fair chance that, and you're right. I mean, it makes sense because a lot of these companies where we hear this kind of announcement is because Palantir is a pipe investor and they need to disclose. I mean, that's the idea, because you are doing a SPAC merger, so you have to disclose who are the pipe investors, and that's how I come to know about it.
Yeah.
So there is a strong likelihood the deal, if there is a deal between AbCellera and Palantir, it's a traditional deal. Yeah. Because if that is the case, because I can imagine the kind of work AbCellera is doing, they will be spending around 5 million plus on data and AI annually. I mean, that makes sense because that's the core of what they do. So if Palantir, because to be honest, 80% of Palantir customers are not known.
Yeah.
A lot of these customers are not known. So I mean, some of these companies may have a deal with Palantir, but they are under some sort of NDAs that they cannot disclose. Like normally what happens, we have seen that companies, when they have successful track record, then they come back and then they discuss, okay, we did this with Palantir and this is how it turned out.
Yeah.
And AbCellera has done some good advancements, but AbCellera has to deliver like a big daddy solution. Like, so this is their opportunity as of today. So for example, they have now got the opportunity after this approval, and if they deliver it, and after like 10 months, 12 months, we see that it really helped in the fight against COVID. I would say that's the kind of opportunity they will say, okay, how this journey actually shaped out if they are partner. So no, I agree. I mean, the logic to me makes sense.
Yeah.
So
the other thing that, and this is something that I spoke to Palantir Vision about yesterday, and I was talking to Jackson, and I said, and I know a lot of people didn't necessarily agree with me. I was reading the YouTube comments, and this was centered around, could Palantir split itself off from its government division and its commercial division, right? And the reason why I say that is I like the fact that the company is together right now, but there are still a significant amount of people that right now view Palantir in a very negative lens, right? They like the technology, they just don't like the reputation. And, Palantir has pretty openly said, like, look, we're here to support Western democracy, and we'll do everything we can to support it. But does that necessarily mean that, you want to work on some of the more controversial parts of what the U.S. government does? We live in an era where you have to be realistic, right? You have to say to yourself, okay, who do I want to get in bed with? Now, a lot of people are very distrustful of the government, whether you're on the Democrat side, whether you're on the Republican side. it depends on the administration, and if Palantir is working with that administration, it's automatically, oh yeah, that's that company that's taking all this data and using it to do stuff. So if you ask people, there's still very significant amount of people that don't necessarily want to have so much government involvement in a company, especially technology companies. That's why if you look at a lot of these big tech companies, they've shied away from working with the federal government on certain projects. And I think I should have made that a little bit more clear on the video when I said it. Microsoft works with the federal government. Apple works with with the government. Amazon, they all work with them. But there are certain projects that they won't do. Like Google had Project Maven with their facial recognition technology. They said no, we don't want to do it with the federal government because this leaves a huge liability in our technology being misused, right? And it's kind of the same thing with Palantir, where there is a potential for the technology to end up being misused, and that misuse gets carried into the reputational damage that Palantir would end up getting, So the example that I laid out was, was like this recent tragedy where, according to New York Times, during our last few weeks of being in Afghanistan, they used a Predator drone. They hit a target that they thought was ISIS-K. It turned out to be a humanitarian aid worker and had like 8 children and wiped out his family, right? It's a tragedy. It's an ongoing thing. And we know how Palantir was involved in intelligence gathering, but also with regards to, monitoring targets and doing threat assessments and everything else. So that right there, if it comes out that, hey, the government used Palantir to target this individual and, there was a mistake made by the end user, no one is going to remember that end user. They're just going to remember Palantir is that technology company that enabled the U.S. government to take out an innocent person. I
agree. I mean, like people, even if they don't want to remember it, the people who are opposing Palantir, they will bring it out. So because I see here is my take on it. And to be honest, I don't know what's the right answer for this. Okay, but let me try to frame it. Mm-hmm. See, when I see companies like Boeing, mm-hmm. okay, Boeing work with US government in defense. Mm-hmm. And Boeing is supplying airplane to everyone. No one ever has come and ask these questions to Boeing.
Yeah, but see, the difference, and I'm glad you brought up Boeing, but here's the thing with Boeing. If you look at the amount of involvement in the military that Boeing has, it shrunk so much. Like, if you can right now name one fighter plane that was developed by Boeing.
Oh, it's been long time.
Yeah, it's mostly Lockheed Martin. Okay. Boeing has a very, very limited scope in their military contracts at this point. And even the planes that they do make for the U.S. military are non-attack planes. Like I think they make some refueling jets and things like that. But you'll see very few.
It makes sense. Yeah. I mean, this is one thing. Like when I see, and here I think I draw a line like between a lot of them. So. See, I used to work in oil and gas. I mean, a lot of my clients have been, and everyone knows I'm a renewable climate change EV bull. Okay, that means when I talk to my client, I speak to them with the same audacity that this is what the direction should look like. And a lot of things I have done. Like for example, I was very passionate to move a lot of my clients and to explain them that how you can move into offshore wind, what kind of different expertise. And to me, this is like, this is where I feel home at times. Okay, because I think, you cannot just shun the world around it. These people are there. There are so many hardworking people, so much capex, so much technologies are there. It's not a popular choice, but it's a choice I made for myself, and I want to leave with that. So when I see like some of these clients, I talk to them, they started their journey on cloud with Google. Okay. And then Google decided that at some point of time that, okay, we are not going to put our best like AI and all the solutions for fossil fuel company. Okay. And fine, it's their decision. That's okay. Okay. Right. And what happens now is that this decision in Google was taken by certain people. Not everybody in Google was going for this. Okay, I mean, that's the idea. In a company, you should have dialogue, and based on that dialogue, company decide, okay, we hear you and we do this. The challenge I see today is that in Google there is no scope of dialogue. That if people sitting in Silicon Valley, they say that Google is going to do this, Google Global literally has no say. I talk to people in Google, I talk to very senior people, and discussing, okay, like this still have energy clients, and we talked to them, and I said, guys, I mean, to in good faith, I can't say anything to them, because what you are doing, you have made a stand, you have to live by it. How do you tell your clients off the line that you will be able to help it? This is the reality on the ground. I mean, and luckily, I mean, I can share about this discussion, because this discussion didn't happen when I was working with VCG. This discussion happened outside VCG when I was working, I mean, having chats. But this is a reality I'm seeing. And then what I'm seeing is, like, for example, I come from India. I mean, I believe you have Indian roots as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there is this whole idea that has been cultivated in last 20-30 years, that you don't help governments because you cannot trust them. I mean, I find it very difficult. My idea is, like, so many people lost their lives, so many people have struggled. We have seen World War I, World War II, we have seen partitions of countries, and everything is done because people fought for the democracy, and we have seen the fruits of democracy, I think. So by not working for a democratic government, you don't like it, you have democratic ways to go against it, to raise your voice, but you cannot make your institutions weak. And another thing I saw is, like, if you take a stand, you have to live by that stand with all the governments and all the countries, and that is where I see difference. I see, like, some of these demands that has been made in Silicon Valley. Okay, I'm not against it. I mean, in general, like, because that's the idea. I mean, people, I'll do anything to protect the right for people to speak about it. Yeah. But I cannot support that while your right is protected, everybody else's right is gone. So what I'm seeing, like, for example, I mean, we all saw what happened with the Cambridge Analytica. So, I mean, to be honest, I mean, if you say, I mean, Facebook is a part of a whole group of companies that have narratives of freedom of speech and all. I mean, so I see that this is where I like Palantir, because I like the mission.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree with you. I like the mission myself, but I think what it comes down to is, from a business angle, what would be the best course of action for Palantir in order to do both? So like I said, my in-house solution would tell me to say, well, look, split off the government side. They can use the same technology platform via cross-licensing, right? So now you have two different segments. One is on the commercial side, one is purely working with the government, right? If you're cross-licensing the technology, you're benefiting from the technology development that's coming from either side, right? The other thing also is, now you have potential commercial partners that have ESG focused investors in them, because that's another issue. Because the first part of ESG is you have to be
sustainable.
Ethical. Yeah, and that ethical requirement has to be fulfilled somehow. So this is where I would say with Palantir is that this way you can have two sets of options, right? Giving people the option is always better than just not doing it. So in my opinion, it's like, okay, you want to support Palantir's mission to protect Western democracy, invest in the Palantir that works with the government, and invest in the part that works with commercial. If you don't want any part in the government side, don't invest in it. Only invest in the commercial side. And the other thing is, the commercial side is where I see future revenue growth accelerating way beyond the government side. So if it does accelerate way beyond the government side, it should carry a higher multiple, right? And if it does carry a higher multiple, because right now what's going to happen is eventually your revenue, especially with the government side, especially if you get like a government that's not very, what's the word, with everything kind of winding down in Afghanistan a little bit, right? Not as focused on the war anymore. You may get not so much cutbacks, you may get limited opportunities for growth on the government side. So how do you address that? And also remember, it's not just the U.S. government. It's also FBI and local police departments and everything else that are involved in the government side. Like I said, some people don't necessarily want to be involved in that part. So it's almost like, do I give people the option to choose, right? To have their involvement. Me personally, I would probably invest a little bit of money into the government side. I would invest a significantly more amount on the commercial side because I feel like the commercial side is going to get up there. That government side ends up having stickier revenue, which means that they can probably have a decent multiple also, because you have fixed contracts with governments that can't go bankrupt, right? So
I agree. I mean, I'll probably go more with government side.
Yeah.
I mean, so when I see like, okay, see, I mean, I'm a strategy guy. I think in terms of strategy.
Yeah.
So when I see like this situation and the scenario, the challenge I see, not in terms of the benefits of it, but in the execution of it. Because if you see Thiel, like what he has discussed over the years, I mean, a lot of time even Thiel has gone. I remember even on the discussion he went, so there are like two key companies that has been built in last 30 years is like Palantir and SpaceX. This is what I remember him saying in one of his talks. So, and also the structure of Palantir that they have in terms of founders shares, which was like 49.9, and then they have some more shares for practical control. So when I take that hat, what I see is that, and I mean, Thiel is strong philosophically, whatever his philosophy of Palantir. We love Alex Karp for his philosophy of Palantir. These people with these kind of strong philosophies and that kind of more than 50% control over the company, I think they will not split it. They will only split it if somebody forces from outside them to split it. Okay, and at this particular time, I mean, they are not that big that people start forcing them. People can sue them to shut down. That's a different thing. But people will not force them to split out, and these people will not do it. So I mean, I cannot argue on the merit and demerit of it, because everything you will make in a strategic choice, there will be something comes out of it. Like you come out of commercial, you may have other partners, other solutions, other business models, because then you take a course of choices that will result in that. In terms of execution, I mean, as much we know from outside, I mean, these people will not do it. So this is stigma. I mean, will stick with Palantir, and that's what I said. I mean, it's a bear risk. It's not my biggest bear risk on Palantir. It's a risk I always carry, because my idea is like at the end of the day, technology and performance matters. To me, the biggest bear risk for Palantir is always like, why are you not dominating industries yet? Okay, I mean, I see you in energy. I mean, I see you in other industry. I mean, what you have done is amazing. So, for example, like, I mean, another company I like is Snowflake. I mean, I love a lot what they do, and the reason I like Snowflake is very simple. They focus on a problem. They said we need a solution, simpler solution, a solution that client is going to like. Okay, they solved it. I mean, they expanded on it. Then they started looking more outside. So, but see, the fact is, now they are, I mean, the CEOs also have said in April that they want to do more vertical integration. But the fact is, when they are going into this vertical integration, they are not going to invent all these solutions. They have a lot of partners, so there might be some strategic alliances. There might be some inorganic growth in terms of acquisition. Then they figure it out. So Snowflake is figuring it out things as they are moving. Their customer experience is exceptional. That would allow them to put foot in the door. But yeah, they have not solved the range of problems Palantir has solved. That's the story. So when I see Palantir, like in terms of end to end, 49% growth is good. I mean, I mean, people will say, I mean, I'm going overboard if I'm asking for more. The way I see it is, see, the companies are desperate. They need solution now. I mean, they say, okay, I mean, they are not going to wait it. If you cannot send a sales guy to talk to them or explain it, somebody else does. So to me, like, I really want Palantir to start dominating industry. That means, for example, say I have a small startup, okay, and when I did my startup, I mean, see, I'm connected with people. I mean, I was talking to friends in Google, and they say, oh, we have this startup program. We can put this much money in. You can get this much resources. Same with AWS. I was talking to my investor communities. People say, oh, you are doing startups. We like you. We can put this much money. And I was like, I'm trying to bootstrap because that's my idea. I mean, I'm not looking for funds at this particular time. But the thing is, if one company I would like to go and make that deal, that company is Palantir. Okay, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is where I see, and I talk to people, and a lot of people I have talked, they say, yeah, we have heard about it, but yeah, I mean, we never heard from them. So this is where I see, like, I really want them. And, you know, they have done it in like COVID situation. Like when COVID crisis happened, every week you will hear somebody has signed deal with in terms of monitoring or supply chain or vaccine distribution with Palantir. So they have it. I mean, they can scale it fast. They can deploy it fast. I mean, people from all different domains. I think one thing which people underestimate is, if you see all the people who knows programming and all the people who are going to work on the digital ERP, the percentage is actually less than 0.3%. So how do you bring all these people in? And this is where I think Palantir has, I mean, Palantir is not the only company, there are other companies also, but Palantir in terms of holistic solution, right from AI to low code and all these things. I mean, and we don't know all the modules up there. I think this is where they are pretty unique. One thing which I saw was that, and this is why they succeeded also in this COVID thing, because they were able to deploy, and a lot of these people were not programmer or data guys, but Palantir people worked with them, deploy fast, scale fast. So the utility is there. That means they can bring these people who are outside 0.3%, and they can bring in these people and make them more effective, equipped with these kind of R&D suits, how they say it. Another thing which even if you see like this 0.3% that we talk about, you know, if you start dissecting the demography, like who are these 0.3%, then you will see that it is skewed in terms of gender. A lot of people, I mean, we like it, we don't like it, but the reality is that more programmers are male. I mean, this is not a right balance. And if you start dissecting then in terms of like countries or in terms of race, you will see that this 0.3%, it is very skewed percentage of people. So world is not going to go digital if you don't bring everybody along with yourself. I mean, you have to bring people who probably have not touched computer in their lives. I mean, you go to India and you will find that people don't have computer, but they have mobile phones. So their digital experience is all about phone. And this is where, I mean, I saw that when I saw their COVID-19 applications and the way they scaled up, I mean, they have a solution that can be scaled up fast, that can be deployed fast. And people were coming to them given the crisis and the urgency. So that means they really then create that alpha. So I really want them to like bring this force in and go all in. Like, okay, this industry, if anybody is going to do anything, they will do it on Palantir. That is something I would love to see.
Yeah, I think it eventually will get to a point where it becomes a very standard operating system for the corporations. But I think the way that they're doing it is smart in a sense where they're going from one thing to another, and that synergistic effect is what's taking hold. So an example is their partnership with Wejo, right? Wejo is also partnered with SAIC, with GM, with all these other things. So now it's almost like, okay, all you had to do is partner with one that led you to another, that led you to another. And once GM starts using it, other people downstream on their supply chain, they have to be involved with it, so they end up getting it. And then you have ERP systems that were, that might have been disparate ERP systems that those suppliers are working on. They're like, well, now we need Palantir integration, so let's get that integrated in our system. So you see how one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. That's where I'm bullish with Palantir, in that I feel like now that they've proven their software and people are starting to use it, I think it's becoming more standardized. And that's what happens with, it's not necessarily just what you're using, but what are your partners using? Because if your partners are using something different, right, at the basic level, you need to have some level of integration. And if you have that integration and it's through Palantir, and it's like, you know what, I see that my opposite partner is doing really, really well because of their partnership with Palantir, well, I need to get it too. So instead of having to kind of, go to the company with the project saying, hey, look, I think we can do this for you. It's almost like, hey, we need to get Palantir, because I see our partners using it, and that's what they're doing. They're very broad in their focus, so they're not focusing on any single industry. They're focusing everywhere, And I think their build out of their sales team is going to be huge, because that will essentially catapult that sales growth. And let me tell you one thing that I wholeheartedly agree with you, and that is that they are sandbagging themselves. Easily, I can tell you that target of 5 billion by 2025, they're going to exceed.
No, I mean, I agree with you. That's not how you are going to build a monopoly. I mean, in healthcare, I would say they are doing slightly better. They actually hired this guy who's the chief medical officer.
Yeah.
Because my idea is like, you need these kind of domain guys, okay, who actually bridge this gap, who takes you. So, I mean, like, for example, you see any company, I mean, AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft, IBM. I mean, in different capacities, I have interacted with the companies and discuss the opportunities to work with it or work with them. The reason is because they have the tech, but they don't have that context of the industry. And this is where I always found that sweet spot, that because I was open to learn new things. I've done things by hand. So yeah, I mean, I help them like, okay, how do we bring this context of industry so that the solution can be apt for a client? So this is where, I mean, I believe that the domain expertise should be a focus. Okay, and they have shown it in terms of healthcare when they hired this guy who's chief medical officer. I think this is where probably focus has to be given. Again, I'm looking completely from outside. Like, for example, if you ask me like how they should go in energy, I mean, I can probably speak about it for like days, because that's all I do. I mean, that's my job is. But in a context, and people come to me from all different companies. I mean, from a lot of these companies, they hope we have this client, this is the problem. Okay, we have the tech. I mean, and I spent like a lot of time within my network, because I also learn from it. And there's so many funny things comes, and like, for example, I remember like I was listening about this data IQ thing, and I talked to people who were using it. One thing came in, like I wanted to understand like what they're actually trying to do. And they said, okay, in a lot of these places, you don't have analysts. They want to see that their platform can enable anyone to become and perform like an analyst. So that is a message I get it immediately. Okay, yeah. This is, so then the next thing you see, okay, now look your product from that length. And when I looked at it, okay, they are actually achieving their mission. Then you listen like what their clients are saying. Okay, are their clients saying that by using this, they are able to bypass analyst requirements? Because then you start matching, okay, how the product fit and the strategy is working. Same thing with data robot. I mean, amazing. I mean, the idea is like how you are going to automate AI, the model update and all these parts. I mean, it's cool. Yeah, I mean, both are really, and there are other companies. I mean, like I already discussed in the past, like Harness is one of my favorite company. To me, Harness is a company that will go as big as Snowflake, even larger than that. Yeah. Okay. And the reason for that is very simple for me is, first, I think that the leadership they have in terms of Jyoti Bansal, I think is just amazing. Okay, the guy has done it with AppDynamics. He's done it with unusable venture, traceable AI harness. So he knows what he's doing first. He's well connected. Okay, he has been in trenches, so he exactly knows what problems you see. So think about this point of view, Kris. Right? Sorry, I get into these notions of taking this head. See, today the challenge for everyone in industry is I need to get a single source of truth. Okay, and when this single source of truth is available, oh yeah, you are getting some dashboard. I mean, if you visualize data, you will get a lot of low-hanging fruits. But I mean, that's not the end game. I mean, this is the game. You are having these low-hanging fruits. You have made some advancement, but that's not the end game. The end game is I don't need a dashboard. I need someone who either in an automated way analyze the data and take the action, or present me with choice of actions with embedded trade-offs in that. And if you see, like if you go back and you see like the IBM Cloud Pak implementation of Palantir, it's like CRM. And you remember like some of the videos I saw, I think it's one of the by Tom Nash, also showing that it's not only saying like what do you do, what's your action, it's also saying what are the different actions you take. So this predictive ability. Okay, and you know, sometimes people get wrong. They say, okay, this is not what Alex Karp wants, because Alex Karp says he wants to empower people, and that's what I said. Palantir is very clear that they are deep into AI. So they are also very clear that purpose of this AI is to empower people. And you don't empower people by dashboards. Okay, it's you give them some power, but the empower is that you want people to look for new things. You need to free their time.
Let me just stop you for 1 second. The only reason why I say that is because a few years ago we had a company come in and they said, look, we are going to build you a custom dashboard for the 11 hospitals that you guys cover. We'll give you all this great data. You know, this way you'll be able to take actions and do stuff and find things. After implementation, they disappeared, gone. We use Tableau, and I think maybe like 2 people in the entire organization use that dashboard. Everyone else is just like, it's too complicated to use. I don't really see the value in something that I do telling me that I do it. Like, I don't care, you know. But the thing is, no one ever explored any additional use cases out of it, right? And also any additional data inputs that kind of came in the future, you know, you have to have someone in the background changing up the code a little bit, right, in order to implement that new thing in there. And that's why I think Palantir succeeds where others don't, in that they actually embed forward deployed engineers who are subject matter experts that can make on the fly changes that enable you to be very nimble and also at the same time have a product that works. So like I said, it's been 3-4 years since we implemented it. And I think 2 people in the organization use it. Yet that software provider is just getting money every year, saying, oh yeah, we have a contract for the next 5 years. So, you know, you're just going to keep paying us. And so I'm sorry, sorry I interrupted, but
I'm glad you shared it, because
waste. Yeah.
I mean, this is what I saw, like, and you know, what I saw in a lot of organizations, and I share it openly. See, today we are saying that digital transformation is generating value, and at the end of the day, this wealth is built into companies and share market and all that. You know, the fact is 70% digital value is not creating, digital transformation is not creating any value, because people have to, whatever value we are seeing, it is only coming from a very small portion of success. So there is actually a portion of digital transformation that are actually eroded value.
Yeah.
Okay, because a lot of time, so I'll tell you a very funny story and this is what happened is, in my experience, a lot of time people think digital transformation is digitalization of process. That means you do something on paper, now they will be done on app. And I often engage them to understand that the digital transformation in true senses, can we even eliminate that process? How many decisions can be eliminated? Because it's about not only analyzing things, it's about how much your time and your resources can be freed, because that you can actually take and invest somewhere else. And a lot of people don't have this hat, and their idea is always this, and especially the people who are fast track in legacy organizations and who are going like every 2 years to new positions and all that. Their idea is that my promotion is due in like next 1 year. I need to show this. Okay, and I find it ethically actually very difficult at times. I mean, I've been very open and very, I mean, like, how do I say, like, audacious at time that this cannot be done. This is just not the right thing to do. But what I see, I mean, this is where I see, like, so in a lot of organization, what I saw was, and I have seen it twice, because digital transformation and energy transition. Okay, if you see 2020, there was a flurry of activities in oil and gas companies, and every oil and gas companies was sharing their objectives of renewable. I really appreciate that. But in a lot of companies, what was happening that overnight everybody was becoming energy transition expert also. Everybody was becoming digital transformation expert, and you go and you talk to these people, and they will use all kind of buzzwords, and you say, okay, you should do this. Oh, we have this. And the question for me, like I always ask that if you have it, then why there is a problem? I mean, then you should have solved your problem. I mean, it's an implementation issue. So I saw a lot of implementation problem. Like people have worked in silos. They have created these pilots, successful pilots. They have got awards. They have got beautiful slides to show it. And then they say, okay, how much value? Oh, I have created this much value out of it. And then you aggregate this value, and they say, okay, does this value change from last year to this year in bottom line, top line? They say, no, I mean, they are claiming my portion of value. There is an overlap of value. My idea is value calculation. I mean, I have been in consulting. I have been in projects. I have managed P&Ls. I have led major capital projects more than $1 billion. So I know how to do the calculations. Value calculation is not that difficult. Yeah, there are certain challenges, but it's not that difficult. So in digital transformation, in a lot of these organizations, what I saw is people are not sure what they are trying to do. And this is where at least few companies have advantage, like for example, Snowflake, is because at least in order to do anything, you need to at least first have single source of truth. And this is very simple. So Snowflake, if you wanna, so let's take an organization which has messed up their digital transformation. So if you put Snowflake inside it, so what is the advantage? Snowflake will kind of consume everything on it, like in terms of database. There is no change management needed. There is no disruption needed. So all these political houses within that organizations, nobody is losing anything. So bringing a Snowflake is a non-controversial solution because it is empowering all these small things. And that's where it is providing a low-hanging fruit. So it comes, so the decision criteria is simpler to bring it in because your hurdle rate to spend on that vendor is not that high. It is giving cleanup and connection to all of these people who have this. The challenge comes after that is that at the end of the day, okay, this part is done and you have the single source of truth and the ability to scale, but someone has to come and scale. You have to build those applications. Your core objective is still to serve your client.
Right.
That portion is yet to come. And this is where I see, like, one, this single source of truth is managed or exists in some form of companies or most of companies. The game is no longer single source of truth. And this is where Snowflake says, oh, we want to go vertical because it's very clear. At that particular time, the game is how much infrastructure advancement you are going to do because IoT is going to flood everything.
Yeah.
Okay. With the advent of SpaceX, and I know this because I'm working with one of the CEO of one of the large IoT companies in a specific sector, because they are thinking that, okay, now SpaceX is coming, the bandwidth is gonna increase. We can actually go far. And see, the DevOps becomes more important because all this continuous delivery, continuous integration, I mean, it's a mess if you don't have, and you know what is happening is like, So if you see large tech companies like AWS and Google and all these, they have everything. I mean, to be honest, in paper, there is no differentiation of Snowflake. I mean, yeah, you see BigQuery, Redshift, but the thing is, they don't have that focus. They don't have that simplicity. And same thing when I see in DevOps and CI/CD, I mean, you have seen like Apollo, how much change it has made in Palantir. I mean, they have this end-to-end solution, and the moment they deployed Apollo, I mean, the resources requirement has actually reduced to 1/20th. The companies like Harness, when I see like, okay, all these Frankenstein monsters sitting in all these ERP companies, somebody has to do it for them. And big cloud has these solutions and this expertise, but they don't have that singular focus on it. Yeah. So to me, Harness, I mean, I really like the company. I like the guy. I mean, it fits like my 10x objective. And I see like as much Snowflake is putting this cloud platform, because they don't call it now cloud warehouse, they need the CI/CD. And who is best in terms of CI/CD with that kind of track record? And this is where I say like there is going to be two parallel universe that will exist for a while, or maybe for a long time, where you have this do-it-yourself companies that will come together to create very unique values. Okay, and then you will have companies who are going end-to-end like Palantir. To me, like when I see end game, and this is where I talk to like a lot of people, and so I was doing work with this large company, and they had a very unique problem. And the problem was following, and the problem was like they said, okay, they were buying a lot of softwares from outside, different vendors. They were also developing in-house softwares, and they say our software development in-house always lags behind the commercial. That means when we start developing it, the product is not available outside. Yeah. By the time we finish it, the product is available outside. And then we try to look, okay, how much time you are taking, what's your process? And then I asked them, I said, for all the developments you are doing, you're always building on some existing platform. The problem is you have products being developed in a Smalltalk. You have products being developed in Fortran, Eclipse, C#. I mean, everyone has to develop their database. Everyone has to develop their backend, front end. I said 80% of your time is actually spent in these things, the core engineering module you are going to build. And then we work with them to say, if you are going to do a cloud development, see why you have to build 5 different tools for cross-cloud because of have one front end. Okay, have one background database. I mean, in terms of data lake, whichever your choice is, but have it one database, has it one front end, because then the only thing you are deploying is actually the engineering modules coming on top of it. So for users, it's easy because they are seeing the same thing. Okay, it's not like every time I take a new software, I have to learn like data load and all the plotting and everything. And then I say, oh, I don't have this functionality in here. It was in previous software, so I am exporting data out of it, because people are very fuzzy. I mean, technical people is, I want my plot in a certain way. I mean, I know people who will say that I want cross-plot, but I want this rainbow. I mean, like I get this kind of choices and throughout my life. So to me, the end game is how much you are going to streamline it. Yeah. Where your data source is one, where your front end is one, most of your back end is integrated. The only thing you develop everything on top of it. And this is where I think the beauty of Palantir is actually going to shine, because it is so well integrated. I mean, every time you are going to do it, do it yourself, because companies and products are of different size. And when they were developed, nobody has thought that far, because you don't know. I mean, you only think what your problem you are solving. Right. And I need to see it in the next 4 or 5 years, like how does it play out? This is something I'm really excited.
Well, one of the things that you can tell that the effectiveness of their software is the growth in their, not just the total number of clients, but the total spend, right? When it comes down to it, what gives you more confidence, getting more clients, or that your existing clients are willing to spend more money, right? I agree. Because that stickiness shows that you have an effective product. So that's the thing to me that speaks volumes. I do have one question for you. What did you think about what Kathy Wood was saying about how Palantir would someday rival or even like go ahead of AWS and Google and stuff like that. Like, what did you think about that?
So, see, first, like I've shared, I mean, Kathy and Ark is someone like I really have a lot of appreciation and praise, because I think what they have done in terms of investment and investor community and openness, they have set actually new standards for everyone to follow.
Yeah.
Every day they say what they are doing. They regularly share why they are doing. Nobody does that in investor community. So I think, so when they say something like most of the community, I listen very carefully. And when I listened it, I felt that it makes sense. But this was my first reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But like I said, I'm a strategy guy. I think in terms of inputs and outputs.
Mm-hmm.
But then I see like, how does Palantir defines themselves? Palantir defines themselves as an enterprise OS, as an SaaS company, as an AI company. Okay. Palantir partners with IBM, Palantir partners with AWS. So they want to give this feeling that they are cloud agnostic.
Yeah.
Okay. So at no point, we know Palantir has done infrastructures for different clients. But Palantir focus is software. It's a high margin business.
Yeah.
And they can do infrastructure as long as it enables their software deployment, and those kind of contracts they do the long term. Now, if you take the case of AWS, how does AWS defines themselves? They define themselves as platform as a service, cloud infrastructure, infrastructure as a service. They are okay if you use SageMaker. They are also okay if you build your own AI solutions on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So same thing, Google defines themselves. Same thing is IBM, and so you see they are in a infrastructure war, these companies. And like we have seen, and that storage is cheap.
Yeah.
The compute is costlier than that. The good AI and diagnostic is even costlier than that. So these companies, they are in a different business, because they can go into this infrastructure world because they are client of themselves. Whole of Google and YouTube is actually built on it. Whole of Microsoft Office and is actually built on Azure. Whole of AWS and Amazon supply chain logistics is actually built on it. So these portions of business have higher margin and dollar for them because they have the scale. Palantir cannot replicate that.
Yeah.
And they never say, I mean, Azure never say we are a SaaS company. We are an infrastructure company and platform as a service company.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, they can provide you like Office 365, which is a SaaS solution on top of it, MS Teams and things like that. So I see their strategic positioning is different.
Right.
So in my view, and I could be wrong, and this is how I think, so I have to be very honest, like why I think like this. I feel that companies like Google or Amazon or Palantir, they're actually very simple to understand. You just listen what their management is saying, and you just see what their management is doing, and then you hear what their clients are saying. If the story is consistent, you know exactly what the company is doing. It's not difficult. As much difficult it is projected on finance media channels and pundits sitting there, or a lot of articles coming sometime on seeking alpha and investor place and all that. It's not that difficult as much people say, and people go into the numbers and balance sheet and all that. Okay, fine. I mean, you can do that, but their message is actually very simple. So Palantir has a message. They have not changed it. Tomorrow, if they go into infrastructure, they will burn a lot of money. They need to first become a very large client of their own solutions as themselves. I mean, they use their solution as Palantir Vision discussed in an offline interview with Sharma, but they cannot create the kind of volume these companies will have. To create that kind of volume, Palantir has to create a lot of end user products.
Yeah.
This has not been listed anywhere in their strategy or in their mission. Okay, so in short, I mean, I cannot rule it out, but the likelihood I see is very less.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm actually very happy that if Palantir doesn't do any head-to-head competition, because they are in a high margin business.
Yeah.
So
I'm in
yeah,
agreement with you. I thought the same exact thing. I thought, why would they want to almost become competitors with the people that have readily partnered with them, right? Because if you go into a business that's directly competing against Amazon or IBM or Google, they're not exactly going to say, okay, yeah, let's keep our partnership together and do that. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to burn any bridges right now anyway. Maybe one day when Palantir becomes a behemoth and they can afford to wage a war for something like this, then it'd be a different story. But right now, it would definitely not be the thing. So that's why I thought so. I thought the same thing. I was like, why would she say that? Like, what is her reasoning behind that? So I'm glad
I'll
to
give
me
you
and
an
you're on the same page.
example for that. Like
Yeah.
why, I mean, so, if you see these giant companies, okay,
Yeah.
they all have done it. Like, for example, when Amazon started, it was a book company. Then they went into more merchandise and other things. Then, in order to do that, they realized that they need to excel in technology. So, essentially, they become a technology company that led to AWS. Now they have all this data and they know, okay, which product, what's the supply chain looks like. So, at the end of the day, you see that Amazon tried to dabble into products like, for example, sometime building TVs, sometime building other products, sometime they make differentiation, for example, as they
Yeah.
have done in the Alexa based products. But you see, they do it because they have excess cash to do it.
Yeah.
We have seen this with the Google. Google has done a lot of projects, quite unique projects like Google Maps. I mean, they started Waymo. I think, irrespective of how much success Tesla has gained over Waymo, but Waymo was my first introduction with autonomous car.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first video I saw it. So, and now you see Google came into devices and phones. So why they are doing it? Because now they have excess cash. So they're looking for those incremental gains and things like that. Microsoft has done it. They stayed in OS for very long. I mean, the whole decade. Steve Ballmer
Yeah.
was, I always call, a decade of lost opportunity. They did well.
Yeah.
I mean, they did well in Xbox. They rigged out a lot of cash in terms of Outlook and yeah, I mean Windows. But the way I see it is following: 99, Microsoft was hundreds of billions of dollars. Google was nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there was a time when Google exceeded them. So did Microsoft destroy value? Oh, for sure. They have destroyed a lot of value. I mean,
Yeah.
just because they have this excess cash. So and now then they came with Surface Series and all that. So all of these companies actually start going into areas and
Yeah.
competing when they have this excess cash. So will Palantir will do it? Maybe if Palantir reach that point where it is out of ideas and where it has tons of cash. That is not today.
Yeah.
So I don't see logic and strategic reasoning as of today.
Yeah.
Uh, and is Palantir going to? So question is, so from where the Palantir revenue is going to come? If Palantir is not stealing revenue from these companies, where the Palantir revenue is actually going to come?
Right.
Actually, it's a revenue that is going to be created as a part of a fraction. Digital transformation is going to create value for client. So for example,
Yeah.
you work for a client and you create a value for 30 million and you get 5 million. Then clients say, okay, what else we can do?
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, this 30 million that extra created, let's put 15 into something and we spend 2 million on them. So
Yeah.
digital transformation, I think that is one of the misunderstood factors, that it is going to create a lot of value. So the revenue for these companies is actually going to be a fraction of that value. The question is then who is losing the battle? Because
Yeah.
I mean, thing is, a lot of companies are not doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
things have changed. We always talk about Kodak moments in different industries. People may not realize, like with the cloud, I mean, infrastructure is available at your fingertips. Like today, tomorrow, like if I launch my SaaS
Yeah.
product, uh, I don't have to worry about a lot of things. I don't have to worry about my payment solutions. I don't have to worry about my cloud needs and all that. I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about my CI/CD needs. I can always outsource to these companies. So the
Yeah.
question is, if I have a right product, I can scale fast. So if I can
Yeah.
scale my product fast, that means somebody is losing market cap in that, or somebody is losing directly, indirectly something.
Yeah.
So the rate of disruptions and obliterations of existing product is going to be very fast. So if companies are not reacting fast, by the time they react, they are done. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. That's actually funny that you mentioned that. One of my close colleagues is telling me about a company. I don't know if you've heard of it. You might have. DigitalOcean.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's it's just like you said. It's much more narrowly focused on DevOps than it is on just doing raw compute like Amazon. Amazon's everywhere doing all these different services, but he's like, I love this product because I get something fixed, right? Like I get a fixed billing. I know exactly what I'm going to be paying for. I don't have to do like Chinese geometry to get what my AWS charges are. So for early DevOps, it's great, and they're growing super fast, and it's very easy to use. So it just looks like that, where I think a lot of cloud, like big time cloud providers, if they don't do the right thing, they may get disrupted,
yeah,
by smaller people. Because I think what it is, and even Amazon says this, 7 years ago, Amazon, when they first started AWS, they said we didn't have another competitor for a significant period of time. Like no one wanted to be in this space, or they were just not good enough to be in this space. So that's why Amazon was able to capture so much market share. And I feel like anytime you have these legacy products, you typically see complacency, right? You get big enough to the point where you start ignoring all the telltale signs that the smaller competitors are coming behind you and saying, we're AWS. We don't have to worry about that. I wonder if that's going to be the same case going into the future, where that complacency will end up eroding their market share by smaller competitors, and then their smaller competitors becoming more, because remember, smaller competitors are always going to be more agile. They're always more nimble. They can make changes on the fly that you, as a much more larger organization with a lot of bureaucratic processes, are not going to be able to do, right? So that's where I would say, I mean, and like I said, it all goes back to company culture. Now with Bezos no longer with Amazon, well, technically Bezos is still at Amazon, but just not in role as CEO. I wonder if that strategic vision that Bezos kind of brought in will stay with Amazon, and who knows? Who knows?
yeah. I think it might stay, because like this is what I discussed. Like, see, Amazon is like a cult. It's a culture. Once you instill that kind of thing in a company, I mean, it prevails even after people leave. I mean, when a founder leaves, there is always going to be some changes.
Yeah.
But thing is that in totality, it still captures the essence of, if you have the right culture. I think Amazon has done pretty good job, to be honest,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Uh, their whole leadership principles and how it is done. I mean, I'm really surprised. Like even like whatever everything has done in Amazon, how the hell they have made so many mistakes in Blue Horizon. I mean, I really don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something which is a big mystery for me. I mean, but yeah, Amazon AWS is something which is quite unique, the way it has come. One thing which I saw with several of my clients I worked with, and I talked to them. A lot of these big companies on ground, when we saw like their product sheet, we say, okay, they are literally same. That's not the reality at the client. So I know one of my client who developed their solutions on Google. Later on, they moved to a different cloud provider, and they were having issues because their virtual machines were crashing too much. I mean, now we are talking like two big guys here.
Yeah.
Okay, then I was talking to, like, one time I was having this working with this regulator, and they wanted to have. So I was discussing with one of the cloud provider, and they said we cannot do it because we do not have our data servers, and the condition is to have the data servers in the country. because of data residency issues. I said, makes sense. And then I was looking to another one. I said, what you are doing about this? They said, we cannot build that kind of data residency solutions. We are just hiring some local servers. So I said, but that will not be able to give the quality. But yeah, but that will help them to qualify for the tender and the bid. So I was seeing like on ground, one company is very clear that they will only bid if they can deliver that quality. Another company was not. And now I'm talking like these big guys. So the user experience for people, even in these big guys, is actually very different. And I'll tell you, like for example, you see, and you remember I posted this, I was looking for this, like for example, we are recording this meeting in Microsoft Teams. Its recording is going to be in 720p. Okay, this is something I'm really annoyed, because my idea is like why I went for MS Teams, because I was buying this, I'm a small business, I was looking to buy the solution and to say, okay, you get the Outlook and your domain email, and they have this package. Okay, so you pay $4 on top of it and you get MS Teams. Makes sense. Okay. But I don't like MS Teams.
I hate MS Teams also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. I mean, there's a lot of things I need to manage. Like for example, at my screen, if I have to put my picture same as you on the side, it's annoying.
I like WebEx. I use WebEx.
Yeah, it's integrated well. I like that, but I mean, so the thing is, this is user experience, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have given this experience to them. So now what I'll do, I'm gonna buy either the dial pad or Zoom, and I'll pay like $15 per month. So my whole package of Microsoft, which includes my email, all the Outlooks and everything, is $9. But just because of that experience, I'm going to give that $15. So when I contacted them and I said I want recording in 1080p, they said, oh, we cannot do it for such a small business. Okay, so then what I do, okay, then I need a service on top of it. And that's what I was looking. I need a bidding service that has premium experience and that can record in 1080p, and would love if it can do in 4K. So to me, this is something which is on my mind, like I think about it. And it's a very small, annoying feeling, but I really want solution of it. So this is exactly what users feel. Now, if somebody is having a really crunch situation and a real critical problem to solve, and they are annoyed because of certain thing they cannot do with data or access or accountability, this is exactly where good companies nails the client. So
totally agree.
I mean, I hope, and this is where when I see these videos that Palantir releases with client, and I like them because clients don't do this thing for their contractors generally. I mean, I remember like if you, there were times like we have done some good work and we wanted some letter of appreciation or acknowledgement. Man, you'll have to go like 20 times to these clients and to get that thing done, because that is the only thing that will tell you that your office back sometimes. I mean, this was above average and things like that. And sometimes even for your promotions and all, it works. So clients don't do it. So if your client is telling, going on your platform where I love what you do and it created value for me, this is very big statement.
And also, when they're actually recommending you to their clients, like the Airbus, right? With regards to all the commercial airlines that have partnerships with them. And then eventually it got to Delta Tech Ops here in Atlanta, same situation. Now they're going to be in Boeing, so that cross relationship, it means a lot when you have large industry partners speaking highly of you. BP did the same thing. So I'm sure that a lot of smaller EMPs are probably like, you know what, maybe this is something that we want to follow up with and look at. So I agree. That's something to definitely consider. All right, I think we've hit 2 hours.
Oh yeah, man, I think it's been quite a discussion. Really appreciate for your time, man. It was amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm not that efficient at time in like videos and all that. I'll take the recording and probably in a day or two I'll upload it. And man, and let's keep the discussion ongoing. I'll keep sharing the companies that comes on my radar, especially in the healthcare. And yeah, I mean, just feel free. I mean, wherever you have questions, you think I can add value.
Yeah,
Soon
I'll do the same thing.
Job.
Yeah. Good luck with your new job. Hope everything works, and hope they're compensating you buku bucks.
No, I think it's good. I'm very excited because like when I left BCG, I was very clear that digital and data, this is where I'm going to spend rest of my career.
Yeah.
So in this one, my job includes in terms of digital strategy, data insight. So really excited about it. And of course, yeah, I need to sort out things like in terms of visa and all that because I might have to relocate. So yeah, but overall happy because until now the career was looking a lot of things, but moving forward, I just want to narrow down whatever learning I have in this field. So let's see it works out.
Yep. All right. It was good talking to you. Take care. Oh, by the way, do you have a YouTube channel?
Actually, I have a dormant channel which I use for some private videos only. Okay, but that is something which I will open it because see what is going to happen is when I open my venture, it has 3 arms. I never share about it and I don't tell anything about it. One arm was consulting because I mean I get a lot of consulting work and it keeps me cash flow positive. The second was always like this thought leadership things. Like when you have the idea, so industry annex, the domain I have, industry annex is industry next. This is something which is I'm obsessed about. What is happening next in industry? What is next industry? This is why I booked this domain. So some of my clients, I do some videos for them. Okay. And I share with them in kind of a private list. Yeah. Okay, so I kind of use the same channel and I'll upload it there. I don't have any intention like doing YouTube full time, but what I realized that like when I interact with people, I end up saying the same thing again and again and again. So sometimes it's just convenient. Like sometimes I did Twitter spaces, I just upload, okay, I discuss it, it's there. Yeah. So I think once we'll have chat like this, I'll just, I'll upload it there. I think that's all I'm planning.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Take care.
You take care, man. Bye.
See ya.